Credit cards sliding across counters, tourist grins, and welcome signs can all conceal a much harsher reality. When you strive to establish roots, develop a family, or accumulate riches, a place might subtly become unfriendly after feeling welcoming for a weekend. That is the conflict that underlies Brian's inquiry into virtual travel today. The title of this video is 10 States That Are Safe to Visit But Difficult to Live In as a Black Person. And it reveals how living in America and traveling as a black person adhere to two very distinct set of rules. This countdown identifies the states where black people cannot live happily, despite the brochure's claims to the contrary, using data, migratory trends, and the actual black experience in America. To ensure you don't miss what happens next, watch through to the conclusion, compare notes, and subscribe. Montana is number 10. Perfect skies, vast highways, and snow-capped summits. This is the Montana that is marketed to the rest of the world. Travelers come for the expansive wilderness, Glacier National Park, and the romantic notion of withdrawing into nature to discover oneself. It's perfect for a weekend. The landscape quickly shifts for a black person attempting to establish a life there. At about 0.6%, Montana has one of the smallest black populations in the country. 6%. This indicates that being black is not only uncommon but almost non-existent in many communities. In an interview with the Washington Post, a black citizen said it clearly. Everyone recognizes you when you enter a supermarket store. Not because you're well known, but rather because you're the only black person. After a while, that level of visibility becomes unappealing. It gets tiresome. Montana receives millions of dollars from tourism each year, but the majority of that money is spent on real estate, outdoor recreation, and seasonal jobs in the hotel industry. This is the beginning of the squeeze. As wealthy out-of-state purchasers snap up property for holiday homes and Airbnbs, housing costs in areas close to picturesque towns and national parks have skyrocketed. Long-term stability is more difficult to achieve because Montana's median black household income is significantly lower than that of white households. A black nurse who relocated to western Montana told High Country News, "I love the mountains. I didn't love being the only person in the room who looked like me everywhere I went. Work, school events, even church. And church is key. In states with larger black populations, churches, barbershops, cultural centers, and social groups form the backbone of community. In Montana, those institutions barely exist. When something goes wrong, discrimination at work, housing issues, or even just wanting a space where you don't have to explain yourself, there's nowhere to land. That isolation spills into everyday life. Dating becomes awkward. Networking becomes limited. Even simple things like finding hair care, culturally competent doctors, or black-owned businesses becomes a scavenger hunt. Montana also has a complicated racial history tied to white-only settlement policies in the early 1900s, which quietly shaped who ended up staying and who didn't. Those roots still show in modern demographics and social patterns, even if nobody says it out loud. So, yes, Montana is safe. You can hike, drive, eat, explore, and enjoy yourself without fear. But living there is different. Building friendships, finding upward mobility, and feeling culturally grounded becomes an uphill climb. A black former resident summed it up best. Montana didn't hate me. It just didn't make space for me, and that's what makes it so complicated. The mountains are breathtaking. The silence is peaceful. But silence also means nobody notices when you feel invisible. Number 9, New Hampshire. Granite cliffs, crystal clear lakes, postcard pretty towns. New Hampshire looks like the kind of place where stress goes to die. Tourists come for the white mountains, fall foliage, quiet beaches, and that cozy New England charm. For a long weekend, it feels peaceful, safe, and refreshingly slow. But for a black person trying to actually build a life there, the calm can feel a lot like social isolation wearing a flannel jacket. New Hampshire is one of the least racially diverse states in the United States, with the black population sitting around 1.5%. In many towns, that means being black isn't just uncommon. It's something people notice immediately. A black resident told the Boston Globe, "You don't get lost in the crowd here. You get stared at in it." That kind of visibility changes everything. It affects how you're treated in stores, how neighbors interact with you, and how comfortable you feel just existing in public spaces. Visitors don't see this because tourists come and go. Residents live inside it. Economically, New Hampshire sells itself as business-friendly and tax-like. But those benefits don't land equally. Black households in the state earn significantly less on average than white households, and homeownership gaps are some of the widest in the Northeast. When housing supply is already tight and prices are driven up by wealthy commuters from nearby metro areas, black families trying to buy or rent face steeper barriers. A black realtor in southern New Hampshire told NHPR, "People think discrimination doesn't happen here because it's quiet. However, being silent does not equate to fairness." Then there's community. In more diverse states, black residents find cultural anchors, churches, festivals, social clubs, mentors. In New Hampshire, those spaces are scarce. That means fewer networking opportunities, fewer support systems, and fewer places where you don't have to explain yourself. Even schools reflect the disconnect. Black parents have raised concerns about racial bias, lack of representation, and children feeling isolated. One parent shared in a local school board meeting, "My kid loves this state, but hates feeling like they don't belong in it." Quote, "Tourism masks all of this beautifully. Visitors see mountain trails, farmers markets, lakefront cabins, and friendly shopkeepers. They don't see what it feels like to be the only black family on the block, in the classroom, or in the office." So, yes, New Hampshire is safe. It's clean. It's beautiful. But safety doesn't automatically mean inclusion. And when a place offers peace without community, it can start to feel less like a retreat and more like a quiet exile. As one longtime black resident put it, "New Hampshire is a great place to visit, just not always a great place to belong." Number 8, Maine. Log houses on rocky cliffs, fog rolling over the Atlantic, lobster shacks serving food that looks like it belongs in a travel magazine. That's the Maine everyone knows. It's calm, it's scenic, and it feels like the kind of place where nothing bad could possibly happen. For a vacation, that illusion holds up. Or a black person trying to live there. The story changes once the suitcase gets unpacked. Maine is one of the whitest states in the United States, with the black population sitting just above 1.5%. In many towns, being black means being the only one, not just in the neighborhood, but in the grocery store, at school events, or at work. A black resident told Maine Public Radio, "People here aren't always hostile, but you feel like an exhibit, like you're being studied instead of welcomed. It's not peaceful to be seen all the time. It is exhausting." Maine's economy depends on tourism revenue. Every year, the shoreline and tiny villages are inundated with leaf peepers, cruise ships, and summer renters. However, the same tourism industry raises housing costs and drives out long-term residents. Locking down secure housing becomes a significant challenge for black families, whose average income is already lower than that of white households. Infrastructure is another issue. A housing advocate in Portland told the Portland Press-Herald, "The people who make the city work can't afford to live in it anymore, and that hits communities of color the hardest." Quote, "Beyond a few isolated areas, there aren't many black-owned companies, cultural institutions, churches, or social networks in Maine. Do you need a school that represents your child's identity, a doctor who is aware of racial health inequalities, or a barber that knows your hair? I wish you luck. These services indeed exist, but they are not widely available. Concerns regarding racial isolation in schools where children are sometimes the only non-white student in the classroom have been voiced by black parents in Maine. My daughter loves her teachers. She just hates being the only kid who looks like her, a parent told WGME News. The state's institutions have been impacted by its history of being predominantly white, even if racism isn't stated explicitly. This indicates that networks, social norms, and policies were never created with black citizens in mind. You would never know, though, if you were a guest. Your images will be loved on social media, your money will be happily welcomed, and you will receive a warm welcome. Maine excels at hospitality, but it's not necessarily inclusive. In Down East magazine, a black transplant best described it. Maine is stunning. All I want is for it to accommodate more folks like me. Although everyone is welcomed by the surroundings, the system discreetly determines who is allowed to stay. Idaho is number 7. Pine forests, river pathways, ski villages, and pure mountain air. Idaho markets itself as a location where nature takes control and life slows down. That appeal is effective for travelers. You come for the peaceful, beautiful roads, hiking, and fishing. However, the silence becomes much greater when a black person chooses to live instead of just visit. Black people make up slightly more than 1% of Idaho's population, thus you won't fit in most communities. You're making an impression. In an interview with the Idaho Statesman, a black resident stated, "You don't get the luxury of being anonymous here. Everywhere you go, you're that black person." Quote. This type of visibility affects everything from neighborhood interactions to job applications. People may be courteous, but courteousness does not always equate to comfort. And comfort are important when attempting to construct a life. The largest city in the state, Boise, is frequently commended for its expanding tech culture and rising earnings. You have to make them notice. Quote. Home prices in Idaho have skyrocketed along with the state's popularity. Costs have increased due to out-of-state purchasers and distant workers, making it more difficult for locals, particularly black families with lower generational wealth, to participate. Growth and tourism increase property values, but not everyone's quality of life. Community comes next. Outside of a few communities, there aren't many black churches, cultural institutions, or social gathering places in Idaho. This implies fewer places to unwind without feeling like a spokesperson for a whole race, fewer mentors, and fewer support networks. A black college student in Boise told The Guardian, "I love the nature here. I just wish I didn't feel so alone in it." And that's the contradiction. Idaho is beautiful. It's clean. It feels safe. But safety isn't just about crime. It's about belonging. When your network is thin, your representation is almost non-existent, and your cultural life is limited. Even the prettiest mountain town can feel small. Idaho welcomes visitors with open arms. Long-term residents get something quieter. Wide open spaces and not many people who look like them to share it with. Number 6, South Dakota. Motorcycles roaring through Sturgis, wide open highways cutting across prairie, and national monuments that look like they were carved just for postcards. South Dakota knows how to sell a mood. Tourists come from Mount Rushmore, the Badlands, and that classic old America feeling where everything seems calm, friendly, and uncomplicated. For a few days, it is, but staying longer tells a different story, especially when you're black. South Dakota's black population sits at roughly 2%. And in many towns, it's far lower than that. Being one of only a few changes how you move through space. A black resident told the Sioux Falls Argus Leader, "People aren't rude, but you feel like you're always being noticed." You are never able to simply fit in. Everything is affected by that hypervisibility. Walking down the street, dating, working, and shopping. Additionally, there aren't many options when something goes wrong. There aren't many black churches, social clubs, or professional networks, so you won't have as much support when you need guidance, contacts, or just a place where you don't have to justify yourself. On paper, South Dakota's economy appears stable. However, there are significant wealth disparities. Black households own far fewer homes and earn far less than white households. When tourism money comes in, it primarily supports hotels, seasonal employment, and real estate rather than long-term equity for locals attempting to create wealth for future generations. While Native communities receive the majority of national attention, Black residents frequently find themselves navigating the same systems that were never designed with them in mind. One Black man in western South Dakota told The Guardian, "You don't have to be targeted to feel unsafe." Quote, a housing advocate in Rapid City told High Plains Public Radio, "We see people working full-time who still can't afford to live here anymore. That pressure hits communities of color first. Policing and public services add another layer. You just have to know you're not protected the same way. And yet, visitors rarely notice any of this. They see clean streets, smiling locals, and wide open skies. They leave glowing reviews and promise to come back. Living there means something else. It means being one of the only Black faces in the room. It means fewer job connections, fewer cultural spaces, and fewer places where you truly belong. It means realizing that quiet doesn't always equal welcoming. South Dakota isn't hostile. It's indifferent. And indifference can be just as powerful when you're trying to build a life somewhere that never really made room for you. We're halfway through the countdown. If you are enjoying the video so far, hit the like button, subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian, and ring the notification bell for more informative content. Let's get back into it. Number 5, Connecticut. Brick-lined downtowns, sailboats drifting past marinas, and historic streets that look straight out of a movie. Connecticut knows how to look expensive and well put together. Tourists come for the beaches, charming small cities, and that polished New England vibe where everything feels calm and orderly. For a visit, it's lovely, but living there as a Black person means discovering how wide the gap is between the postcard and the reality. Connecticut is one of the wealthiest states in the country. Yet, it also ranks near the top for racial inequality in education and income. Black and Latino students are far more likely to attend underfunded segregated schools while white students dominate the top-ranked districts. A 2024 Wallet Hub study found Connecticut among the worst states in the Northeast for racial equality in education and employment. A Hartford teacher told CT Insider, "We're a rich state, but that money doesn't reach everyone." Depending on whatever side of town you're on, Connecticut is two separate places. Additionally, there is frequently racial division on those sides of town. Because they spend their time in walkable downtowns, coastal enclaves, and well-preserved historic regions, visitors hardly ever witness this. However, Black people are much more likely to reside in metropolitan areas with fewer resources, underperforming schools, and restricted access to well-paying employment. The disparity is not audible. Zoning regulations, school district boundaries, and investment allocation all incorporated. The same is true with housing. The racial disparity in home ownership in Connecticut is among the largest in the nation. Black families are more likely to rent in locations with growing costs and fewer protections, and they also experience higher mortgage refusal rates. In addition to public services and law enforcement, a housing advocate told the Connecticut Mirror, "Where you live in this state still determines what kind of life you can have, and race plays a huge role in that." Quote, despite the fact that crime rates do not warrant the disparity, Black residents are stopped, searched, and arrested more frequently than white residents. One New Haven resident told WFSB News, "You can be in a nice neighborhood and still feel like you're being watched differently." Tourism hides all of this beautifully. The museums, beaches, and quaint towns offer a version of Connecticut that feels inclusive and progressive. But long-term residents know the ladders to opportunity are unevenly spaced. So, yes, Connecticut is safe. It's scenic. It's wealthy. But wealth without equity creates a quiet kind of exclusion. The kind that lets you visit comfortably while making it much harder to stay, grow, and thrive. Number 4, Minnesota. Lakes everywhere. Bike trails that never seem to end, world-class theaters and neighborhoods that look like they were designed for brunch. Minnesota markets itself as one of the most livable places in the country. Tourists love the Twin Cities for their art scene, food culture, and progressive reputation. It feels friendly, organized, and safe. But living there as a black person means learning that politeness and equity are not the same thing. Minnesota consistently ranks near the top of the nation for racial disparities, especially in policing, income, and homeownership. Black Motans are several times more likely to be stopped, searched, and arrested than white residents. A Minneapolis community organizer told Minnesota Public Radio, "You can be surrounded by murals about justice and still feel like you're one traffic stop away from being treated like a threat." That tension sits just beneath the surface. Visitors see lively downtowns and lakeside festivals. Residents feel the weight of surveillance. Housing tells another story. The Twin Cities have experienced massive gentrification over the past decade. Neighborhoods that once had strong black communities have seen rents skyrocket and homeowners pushed out. A black homeowner in North Minneapolis told the Star-Tribune, they call it revitalization. "We see it as eviction with improved branding. You don't see that in tourism." Unaware of who was priced out to make such areas appear so lovely, visitors stay in refurbished lofts, dine at hip restaurants, and stroll through once affordable neighborhoods. Although Minnesota's economy appears to be doing well, black people there make significantly less money than white families and are far less likely to be homeowners. When property values increase more quickly than salaries, it becomes far more difficult to create generational wealth, which is what allows for long-term stability. Social strain comes next. Minnesota is courteous but not always hospitable. People will smile at you all it takes, but they won't invite you in. It's like you're always on the outside of the circle, a black transplant told The Guardian. This social distance has an impact on friendships, career advancement, and networking. It's not overt animosity. Quiet isolation is what it is. Minnesota is a stunning state. It's secure. It has culture. However, living there entails navigating a system in which opportunities are not allocated equitably and regulations are not applied equally. The finest way to describe it was by a long-standing black resident. Minnesota does a fantastic job at appearing forward-thinking. Living here teaches you the distance between perception and reality. Wyoming comes in third. Wide open grasslands, bison crossing the road, and national parks that look like they were painted by nature itself. For anyone who wants to disconnect and take a deep breath, Wyoming is an ideal destination. Yellowstone, Grand Teton, and that rough, movie-like cowboy look are the main draws for tourists. It's magical for a visit. Attempting to live there as a black person might be like entering a place that never truly expected you. At less than 1%, Wyoming has one of the lowest black populations in the country. That implies you're not only unique, but a novelty in many towns. Everyday life is shaped by this subtle othering, as one black resident told the Casper Star-Tribune. People are friendly, but you can tell they don't know what to do with you. You're always the odd one out. Quote, "It has an impact on who you get invited to, how coworkers treat you, and if you feel comfortable being who you are. Because they are passing through, tourists are unaware of it. It is inhabited by people. Wyoming's economy is mostly dependent on agriculture, tourism, and energy. Not everyone can achieve upward mobility in those industries. The average income of black households is far lower than that of white households, and the job market is limited, making it more difficult to advance in one's career or change careers without moving out of the state. A black oilfield employee told High Country News, "There are jobs here, but the networks are closed. If you're not already part of the community, you stay on the outside." Housing doesn't make it easier. With so few rental options and a small housing market, black families looking to relocate often face limited choices, higher costs, and less flexibility. Add in the lack of black-owned real estate firms or community advocates, and navigating the system becomes even harder. Then there's culture. Wyoming doesn't have many black churches, cultural centers, or social organizations. That means fewer places to find mentors, fewer spaces for kids to see themselves reflected, and fewer opportunities to build a community that feels like home. One black parent told Wyoming Public Media, "My kids love the outdoors. They just don't love being the only ones in their school who look like them." That kind of isolation wears on you. Wyoming isn't loud about race. It doesn't have to be. When diversity is almost non-existent, the system quietly runs without you in mind. The parks are stunning. The skies are endless. But belonging takes more than scenery. As one longtime resident put it, Wyoming will show you the most beautiful views in America. Just don't expect to see yourself reflected in them. Number 2, Vermont. Covered bridges, blazing fall colors, cozy ski towns, and farmers markets that look like movie sets. Vermont feels like a postcard you can walk into. Tourists come for the foliage, the fresh air, and that wholesome New England charm that makes everything feel safe and gentle. For a visit, it's peaceful. For a black person trying to actually live there, it can feel like being dropped into a town where nobody expected you to arrive. Vermont is one of the least racially diverse states in the country, with the black population hovering around 1.5%. In many communities, that means being black isn't just uncommon. It's something people notice immediately. A black resident told 7 Days Vermont, "You're not invisible here. You're quite noticeable. Everyone knows you, but nobody really knows you." That kind of attention sounds harmless until you realize it follows you everywhere. In stores, in schools, at work, and even at the doctor's office. Tourists don't see this because they're here to hike, ski, and take pretty photos. Residents live inside it. The isolation runs deeper because Vermont doesn't have many black cultural institutions. There are very few black churches, social clubs, or community organizations outside of small pockets. That means fewer mentors, fewer networking opportunities, and fewer spaces where you don't have to explain yourself. A black student at the University of Vermont told the New York Times, "It's not that people are mean. It's the constant sense that you don't quite fit in. Housing exacerbates the situation." Vermont has one of the most competitive housing markets in the Northeast, and as out-of-state buyers flock to vacation houses and isolated work retreats, prices have skyrocketed. Black households are squeezed first since they typically have lower generational wealth. A housing rights group told Vermont Public, "The people who need stability the most are the ones being pushed out." Even schools reflect the imbalance. Black students are far more likely to report racial isolation and lack of representation in classrooms and curriculum. One parent shared at a school board meeting, "My child loves Vermont. They just wish Vermont loved them back." And yet, the tourism machine keeps rolling. Visitors experience the friendly version, the smiles, the festivals, the scenic drives. They leave thinking Vermont is progressive, welcoming, and fair. Living there tells a more complicated story. When your community is tiny, your culture is missing and your opportunities are limited. Even the prettiest place can start to feel lonely. Vermont may welcome everyone to visit, but belonging takes more than a beautiful view. Number 1, Oregon. Rain-washed forests, quirky neighborhoods, food carts on every corner, and ocean cliffs that look like they were designed for Instagram. Oregon sells itself as a progressive paradise. Tourists come for the vibes, the craft coffee, the hiking trails, and that reputation for being open-minded and inclusive. On the surface, it feels like a place where everyone belongs. Living there as a black person exposes how carefully curated that image really is. Oregon has one of the smallest black populations on the West Coast, sitting at just under 2% statewide. That didn't happen by accident. Oregon was literally founded with black exclusion laws written into its constitution. Laws that banned black people from living in the state in the 1800s. Those policies didn't just disappear when they were repealed. They shaped who settled, who owned land, and who built wealth for generations. Portland, the city most people associate with Oregon, once had a thriving black community in the Albina district. That community was systematically dismantled through highway construction, urban renewal, and later gentrification. As property values exploded, black families were pushed out. A longtime resident told The Oregonian, "They didn't drive us out with police. They drove us out with rent." Quote. Today, Portland looks progressive on the outside, but the numbers tell a colder story. Black home ownership is far lower than white home ownership, and black residents are far more likely to be displaced as neighborhoods revitalize. That coffee shop and yoga studio often sits on land where a black family used to live. Socially, Oregon can feel welcoming, but distant. A black transplant told the New York Times, "People are polite, but you always feel like a guest in someone else's house." Quote. That feeling follows you into workplaces, schools, and even social circles. Black professionals report being hired for diversity optics, but struggling to advance. Parents talk about their children being isolated in classrooms with little representation. And while Oregon celebrates inclusion, black-owned businesses and cultural spaces remain scarce. Tourism hides all of this. Visitors see bike lanes, farmers markets, and ocean views. They don't see the racial wealth gap, the housing displacement, or the quiet loneliness many black residents describe. A black educator in Portland told OPB, "It's easy to love Oregon when you're passing through. Attempting to fit in is more difficult." Oregon is the ideal closer for our countdown because of this. It's secure. It's lovely. On paper, it's progressive, but living there for a long time requires navigating a state that was never intended with black people in mind and hasn't yet made the necessary corrections. When someone says, "But Oregon is so liberal," keep this in mind. It's not a feeling of inclusion. It's opportunity, housing, access, and policy. And there is still work to be done in Oregon. Make sure you hit like, send this video to someone who is considering moving, and subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian if this list made you reevaluate your assumptions. More real-world explanations about where to prosper, where to exercise caution, and how to move more wisely as a black citizen and traveler are on the horizon. The truth about where you live is more important than the views, so watch one of the other videos on the channel next.